Hey everybody, welcome to another video from the Electronic Armory. In this video, we're going to show you how we can trigger our wall to move up based on another actor entering that trigger volume that we set up in the previous video instead of our player. It's one thing to have our player walk to the wall and have that wall open up as an automatic door, but let's say you want to have a puzzle where you have to move a certain object into a certain area in order to, unlock this puzzle or, in our case, move the wall up. So make sure you watch the last video to see how we set up our trigger and our blueprint for our wall. But in this video, again, we're going to go a little bit further and, again, trigger it based on another actor. So the first thing we have to do is place another actor in our scene. And I'm going to do that with our starter content. I'm going to go into that folder and disclose that arrow. And under props, we have a whole bunch of props here. And for this one, I'm going to add a table. Tables are pretty easy to tip over. So I'm going to add it right about there and making sure that it is not inside of our trigger volume, but just on the edge of it. You can maybe turn down snapping to 10 to get a little bit finer control over that. And that's fine. Maybe just right there. That's all we need. I'm going to turn that back up to 50 or 100 before I forget. Okay, so let's just see if this works. I'm going to hit the play button, and our table does not move. I can jump on top of it, and I can go in our trigger volume, and that opens the door, but our table doesn't move. So let's fix that first. And the way that we fix that is we first have to make it movable, but if we simply click the simulate physics down here in the right-hand corner for our mesh, make sure the table is selected first. Simulate physics, click that. It'll automatically make that button change to movable, and also simulate physics as the button says, so that when we knock into it, it'll indeed get knocked over. Okay, so perfect. And that table goes in there, but it didn't get triggered until our actor, our player walked into it. So let me show you that again. So I clearly throw the table into the volume, nothing happens, and then our player triggers it. So the next thing we have to do on our table is if we select our table, make sure it's selected, and go down to collisions down here. Just scroll down until you see collisions. Again, make sure our table is selected. We want it to generate those overlap events that we're listening to on our event listener. So generate overlap events, check that. And these are, by the way, unchecked because we don't want all these objects sending out these notifications that I've been hit, I've been overlapped, that sort of thing, because it slows down our system. And if you don't need it, it doesn't need to be on. So now that we have that table generating overlap events, when this overlaps with that trigger volume, it indeed triggers our wall. Okay, so the next thing is any actor that we have, including our player, because it inherits from actor. Actor is pretty much the top level item that we can inherit from. Our static mesh actor table also inherits from actor because it's a static mesh actor. But I don't want it to be triggered coming from our player here, just the table. Again, maybe that's a secret that we have to kind of push over to that wall to make that happen. So how do we filter out this table as the only actor that will enable this trigger? Let's go to our blueprints. So if we go to our blueprints folder where we have that automatic wall blueprint, let's open that up. So what this is saying is on actor begin overlap, it doesn't care which actor, just any actor overlapping it, move this wall up. I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel to zoom out and right click to drag over and give us some space here, because what we want to do is add a little bit of logic in between when this gets triggered and when the wall moves up to only do this if our actor is a static mesh actor. Okay, so how do we determine that? I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Well, we have these two parameters that are passed in when this event gets triggered. So when this event gets triggered, we know which actor was overlapped, namely the trigger volume. And we could use this to maybe disable that trigger volume once it's been activated or overlapped. And so it just gives you a reference to it. The other one is the other actor that has overlapped with this trigger volume. And this is the one that we're interested in. This is going to tell us whether it's a player or the table. So I'm going to click and drag, left click and drag this off, and it says place a new pin. So release. And I'm going to do what's called a cast. And a cast, if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, is taking a base class and trying to set it to a different type. Now in Unreal and in the blueprint specifically, it'll tell us whether that cast is successful or is a failure. And if it's a failure, that means that it's not the correct type that we're trying to cast to. So if you just type in CAST, we can do a cast to, and then we want to cast it to a static mesh actor. And so if you just keep typing that in, you should eventually find cast to static mesh actor. So I'm going to click on that. And this is going to be our test here. So I'm going to alt click on this pin to disconnect it and then drag this into this one. And so the object is other object gets cast into that because we dragged it out from that. And so what happens if the cast fails? Well, if the cast fails, this is likely going to be our player. So I'm going to drag this off to have an executable line that says, basically I'm going to print something to the screen saying, hey, this is our player. So print, that'll create the print node. And then the string that we're going to print out is, this is our player. Okay, so that's our player if the cast is a failure because it is not a static mesh actor. If it is a static mesh actor, namely that table, we want it to move the wall in the up direction. Okay, and then we can get a reference to that static mesh actor if we want to, but we don't need it. We just want to know if it is or not. And that's all we have to do. So let's go ahead and save, compile, switch back to our editor, hit the play button, and I'm going to walk into the trigger volume, and if you see up in the left-hand corner, this is our player that gets printed out. Let's walk out, walk back in. There's our print message in the top left-hand screen. This is our player. I'll show you that one more time. Okay, so obviously our wall hasn't moved up, but let's try our table. I'm just going to run into it really quickly. And there we go. So that static mesh actor, namely the wall, is the one that triggers it. Now, if you want to refine this further, there's things that you can do, such as making this table a blueprint and adding a variable to it to give it a specific type or an ID and say only this table with ID is the one that can trigger this volume. But I'll give that to you as an exercise to do. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to more complicated things. So I hope you found this video useful. If you liked it, give it a like. And if you want to see more content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.